Welcome to a Tin Dog podcast, talking about Nightmare in Silver. Ah yes, the Cybermen are back, in a story set in the distant future. Yes, a kind of Earth colony kind of a way. We have the new look Cybermen. Now apparently Neil Gaiman tweeted saying, "How can I make the Cybermen scary again?" The replies came back thick and fast. Basically, he had to make them sneaky like they were on Moonbase. The problem with this story is that, well, I knew it was a Neil Gaiman story. There's a lot riding on that. You know that feeling you get in the pit of your stomach, or perhaps it's just me, at the beginning of a new series where you're thinking it couldn't possibly be as good as it used to be, where Doctor Who just couldn't quite match up, and you panic for most of the day just before Doctor Who comes on, thinking it's all going to go pear-shaped, it couldn't possibly meet my expectations. There needs to be a word for it, because there's a word for that whole getting enjoyment out of somebody else's misfortune. There must be a word like trepidation. I suppose that would be the nearest it could come up with, meaning that feeling of worry you get about something perhaps letting you down. Maybe it's like Christmas. Christmas can't possibly be as good as you imagine, except it sometimes is. And you know, if I hadn't have known it was Neil Gaiman, if there hadn't been so much riding on this, I would have enjoyed it even more. Cards on the table, I did enjoy last week's more than this, and I can see that not being the popular point of view. This week had some absolutely tremendous stand-out, use them in clips moments. Yes, I know it had a Brain of Morbius feel to it, but that's not really going to go down badly. The Doctor talking to himself, threatening himself, had flashes of the Curse of Fenric with that whole chess game, but that was perfectly fine. Seeing that he had the winning move of regenerating, that was fine as well. There were wonderful, tiny things like the cyber mites, I think they're being called, instead of cyber mats, little weird insects that convert as they go. These Cybermen are completely unstoppable. And yet, while I was watching it, my mind wandered. I thought, that paint job's terrible. Indulge me for a second, because I'm obviously caring about something that genuinely does not matter. When RTD took over and wanted to bring the Cybermen back, he said he wanted them made out of steel, looking fantastic. Now, to achieve that, they're not made of steel, they're made of fiberglass. What you do is, you mix the gel coat, which is the part of the fiberglass that goes up against the mould, and you mix that with aluminium powder. And then behind that, you start adding your very thin coats of fiberglass. You don't want them too thick, because if they're too thick, the mask becomes too heavy and unwieldy. If it's too thin, the mask is brittle. Once the mask is set, you then take it out and you buff it with a sort of spinning polisher. It becomes more and more metallic. Eventually, it becomes almost indistinguishable from steel. And that's how you make the last Cybermen helmet. This Cybermen helmet has been made in, looks like fiberglass, possibly a plastic mould of some sort, and then it's been sprayed with something that looks a lot like the colour of a current Fiat. Now, as far as the world's concerned, you're looking at something shiny, and if you were to put either of these new Cybermen next to the old Cybermen, they'd look a little bit shoddy, with the exception of the ones from Earthshock. Cybermen have evolved, that's the point. They evolve using technology, they steal, they convert. You will be like us. I was always a bigger fan that Cybermen being organic on the inside, and the outside was just the shell, the replacement parts. But as soon as you get removable heads and removable hands, that starts going away. I know the RTD ones at the beginning were converted. Human beings with brains in the bottle. Eventually they became heads that could be captured and taken inside the armour. But that's where I'm just becoming annoying. The ultimate fan nonsense. These are new Cybermen, new toys for us to buy. They look enough like the RTD Cybermen for us to go, yep, they're still Cybermen, but they look far enough away for us to say, no, these have definitely evolved. Gone is the Cybers logo, but they still have echoes, shadows. They're not thin like the ones seen in Doctor Who magazine, but they could only truly be realised using CGI. Now these guys are not wearing wellies. Stealth, yes. But then again there's that, well, let's call it the Matrix moment. Now when they were shooting the $6 Million Man in the 70s, they tried moving things very, very fast, and it looked shoddy. So in order to make him look as though he was running fast, what they did is they slowed down time around him. So when they shot it again, it actually worked. It looked better. It came together fine. Here you've got an example of both of these things. When the Cyberman's moving very, very fast, it looks rubbish. When the Cyberman's moving very, very normally against a very, very slow universe around him, to all intents and purposes the same thing. It looks great. Yes, you can kind of still believe that he's an armour-plated killing machine. Ah, yes. Now the problem with the whole thing is that I was expecting too much. I was expecting something like the Doctor's wife, and that's not what we're going to be given. Because, and let's talk about the elephants in the room, the children from last week. The reason that I enjoyed most of last week's story is that I didn't at any point think about the final scene. It felt bolted on, written by someone else, and just tagged on in order to keep the storyline going. We're only 2 stories from the end at that point, and that's a good enough reason for anyone to go, well, we need to kind of sort out this Clara plot arc. So I let it go. I was worried for a whole week about the incredibly annoying children. I sat there in a kind of panic, thinking, it's going to be terrible, it's going to be terrible, it's going to be terrible. I really didn't have that to worry about. Children in Moffat stories are fine. Gaiman knows what he's doing. And let's face it, Doctor Who is not for 40-something men. It's a family show. It's for kids. And having people in it that they can identify apparently is the way forward. Not that that ever applied to us when we were watching it when we were kids, but that's fine. That's the way things are these days. You need someone on the screen you can relate to, even if it is a stroppy, annoying teenager who you're actually quite pleased when they get cybertized. So once they're taken out the picture and just used as, well, collateral in the bidding war, I can so live with that. So, from the set pieces we have, well, we have 2 very standout performances, and we have an ex-soap actress. From the standout performances, we have to mention straight off Warwick Davis. What an absolute star. If you get a chance to read his biography, I suggest you do so. He's going to be so pleased that he was in Doctor Who. But not only pleased that he was in Doctor Who, but that he got to play a decent character, a character who I for one would like to see back, perhaps dealing with a different threat, while being the Emperor. This guy can act. He's been acting for a very, very long time. He's practically the same age as me and he's very impressive. His performances are understated and full of charm, and here we get to see him without any latex or monster covering. And his stature works, because in the very beginning you see him recreate that classic Victorian and Edwardian master chess computer, the one with the tiny man inside who just happened to be very good at chess. For those historians amongst us, it was just a little smile, and for those of us who like Warwick, an even bigger smile. Conversely, the man playing the proprietor of the amusement park, well, him, the man who played Herrick in Being Human, well, he's just a great actor. Everything he's ever been in has been simply stunning. From the opening scene taking place on a fake Moonbase landing, and how much of a stretch might that have been for the set builders? I mean, look at the evidence. You've got written in the script, they land on what could be the moon. Now, old school Doctor Who fans were used to suspending our disbelief, so we've got that running constantly. Except if you looked at the terrible rocks, and the moon that's just far too big, and the massive amount of footprints and far, far too many visual cues, you knew there was something on. And then they stick their heads out the TARDIS. Has the force field been extended? No, it's just a fairground attraction. it's meant to look shoddy. A nice double bluff there from Neil, and marvellously worked out by the entire cast and set builders. From that moment onwards, you're in a lovely, cosy world, and yet it seems to sag, and the one character in the whole piece that doesn't quite work for me is Clara. She doesn't seem to be acting in a consistent manner, a cohesive manner when it comes to her performance, and it's more down to the writing than the actual performance of the actress. Clara takes on the role of command a little bit too easily. She doesn't question as much. She seems to be more in it for the ride, something more familiar with, say, Rose. But by far, the standout performances in this have to come from Matt Smith. And Matt Smith. At one point, that incredible impression of David Tennant and going on about his former lives was just there for the fans, but you just didn't care. This guy can act. Anyone who doubts that is simply wrong. So yes, I enjoyed it, and yes, I was expecting something more, but then again, I'm not sure what I was expecting. And that you'll have to forgive me for. Now, I'm recording this before it's broadcast on Saturday. As you're listening to this, if you've downloaded it as soon as the episode's finished, you'll be aware that on the red button on the interactive service, and probably downloadable from the BBC site directly, there is a prequel, a prologue to next week's story. The BBC will not be furnishing anyone with an advanced copy. No, that's not quite true. Some people have been given an advanced copy. That's the press. However, these advanced copies have a missing scene. At the very end, the last few minutes, there's just nothing. So, work out for yourselves what's coming, because I, like you, will be joining you next weekend for The Name of the Doctor, when we deal with the one place the Doctor cannot go. Think that is the Doctor's own timeline. Except, of course, he can go there, because he's done it last week. Is this like when the Doctor said, everyone lives for a change, and then the next week everyone lived again? Leave it there. We'll all discover it together at the end of the series. Has it really been 8 weeks? Be seeing you. You've been listening to the Tin Dog Podcast. Doctor Who and its connected properties are copyright and trademark of the BBC. No infringement is intended. To contact the show, email tin-dog@hotmail.co.uk. Whostrology, a Time Traveller's Almanac, is available through Telos Publishing or Amazon. Visit www.whostrology.com for further information. The Tin Dog Podcast is a founder member of the Doctor Who Podcast Alliance.